You're listening to the Co-Creator Network. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Hello, everybody. This is Maxine Taylor with another edition of Move Into the Magic. And as promised, my guest is Stan Romanek. And for those of you who may not have listened to last week's show with his wife, Lisa Romanek, let me just mention that Stan Romanek is probably the world's best-known abductee. I'm not talking about kidnap. I'm talking about extraterrestrial abductee. He is the author of several books, and his latest book, Answers, is awesome, absolutely awesome. Stan has had an incredible journey with his wife and his kids. He is an abductee, a contactee. He is a messenger who is here simply to share his experiences with others, to help them understand they're not alone and not to be afraid. Now, his experiences began as a child when a beautiful woman approached him. And in his book, he shares who this woman turned out to be. Stan, I'm not going to tell your story, darling, but what I'd love you to do, let me first of all tell people, Stan and Lisa are putting on the Romanek Disclosure event, the 29th and 30th of June in Fort Lauderdale. You're not going to believe how affordable it is. If you're in the Florida area, the South Florida area, you've got to go. Each night, when Stan speaks and when Lisa speaks, each night is $20. So you can see that these people are not in it for the money. They're in it for the message. Stan is truly here to share his message. If you go to RomanekDisclosure.com, all the information is there, and you'll be able to find out where the event is. Let me spell Romanek, R-O-M-A-N-E-K. Stan, welcome to Move Into the Magic, dear. It is just a joy to have you on my show.
Well, thank you so very much for having me.
And I would love it if you would jump in anywhere you like. You can start at the beginning of your book. Now, you may not want to give the ending away. I want to tell...
The ending's the most important part. They have to read that for themselves.
They really do, and it's magnificent and absolutely glorious and took my breath away. But we can talk about the different timelines, and we can talk about all kinds of stuff. So why don't you tell us, in your own words, how you came to be, how you arrived at this awesome place of love and sharing and trust and belief?
Well, it was a struggle. It was a struggle for me to get there. But, it got to the point where, I came full circle. When I first got involved with this subject, I was a devout Christian. I believed in God, and there's nothing you could do to tell me otherwise. Even that being said, there were some things in the Bible I just didn't really agree with. And now that I've gone through what I've gone through, everything makes sense. I actually believe in God more now, just in a different way, but I believe in God more now than I did back then.
Understandably.
And people have to know there's good and bad out there, just like there's good and bad here, as it is also as it is on earth, it is in heaven. And I really, truly believe that there are multiple things out there with multiple agendas. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, some of them want to help us, some of them, want to do whatever they want to do. And I believe there are things out there that are, concerned about who we are because, maybe they took part of making who we are, and do I have the answers? No. I don't like when people, especially in the UFO field, you always find people with ego. And they always tell you, we know what's going on, we have the answers. Walk away, because I've been through a lot, and I can tell you, I know less now. I mean, there were things I didn't know. And there's no way anybody could have the answers. This universe is just too big.
Oh, it is. But let me tell you something. Stan, in your book, and I've got to remind people of the title, Answers. My sense is, though I haven't read Messages, so I'm thinking that those two go hand in hand. But at the end of your book, you put the pieces together with the help of Lazarus, of course, and you may want to talk about him.
Sure.
That as I was reading it, my whole body relaxed. It was so spiritually fulfilling to me. It was so beautiful. So please, take us a little bit from the beginning, when you were abducted, or you might want to talk about that beautiful woman who...
Sure.
Well,
in my first book, Messages, I kind of gave you a timeline of, my father being in the military, and I described my experience, my first abduction experience, a lot more so in my first book. I do that a little bit in this book, but I don't, focus on it too much.
Yeah.
But my first experience that I had really was when I was a child. My father was in the military, and he had top secret clearance, and he worked on ICBM missiles. And my father had an incident where a UFO in 1968 in Minot, North Dakota, came down and armed one of the missiles in launch position. And my father was sent out in a small detail. They tracked it from Minot to Grand Forks, and from Grand Forks to a small town in Northwood, North Dakota, where, it hovered above this water tower, and my father and this small detail surrounded this water tower. Well, I remember this beautiful, odd-looking woman coming up to me when I was a kid, and I was playing with my little pedal car that I had. And she just walked up the sidewalk, rubbed my hair, and told me that I was very special. I had something important to do when I grew up. And, I was 5 years old at the time. It's like, yeah, whatever. I'm kind of weird, and I'm going to play with my pedal car. But I remember she opened her hand, and I remember specifically looking back now, she only had 3 fingers and a very long thumb, and the palm of her hand was really long. And she had this large blue marble floating in the palm of her hand. And I started getting sleepy or whatever it was that was happening. And then I heard my mother yelling at me from, inside the kitchen. She was yelling out the kitchen window, asking me what I was doing. And she came running out because there was this strange woman standing by me. And I turned to see what my mom wanted. And as soon as I turned back, the woman had already started walking down, the sidewalk. She had left. And I'd seen this woman 2 other times after that throughout my life. I was born in Denver. We moved to North Dakota. That's where I saw the woman the first time. Then we moved to Cheyenne, Wyoming, where I saw her again. She came up and approached my mom and dad. I was actually having a temper tantrum, and and I remember that specifically because we were Christmas shopping. This woman said, "Oh, what a beautiful little boy you have." And my mom joked around saying, "Yeah, we might want to give him away." And, I thought she was serious. And then there was another incident where we moved back to Denver, and I was waiting to go swimming. I was on a swim team at a local outdoor, public pool. And I was by myself waiting for the pool to get open. And this woman came walking up the sidewalk, and we talked for a little bit, and she scared the heck out of me, and I ran all the way home. And that's really when this all started. And then after that, growing up, you don't really think about things. I had my first major sighting in 2000. And it's funny because I always blame my wife, jokingly, of course, and maybe she really is, thinking about it, maybe she really is the reason why this all started. No, I'm kidding, of course, but
well, let me ask you, Stan, and pause. Don't lose your train of thought. As the child of someone in the military with top clearance, and were you supposed to enter the military? Were you trained with your psychic ability trained? I've read that was often done, and you obviously didn't go into the military.
Well, you know, it wasn't until much later that I realized I was part of something bigger. And if it wasn't for a book that a friend gave my wife, I wouldn't have even remotely thought about this. But yes, it was. I was being groomed to go into the military. I refused, though, absolutely refused. I didn't, even though I have very good memories of the military, I just didn't want to go through what my dad went through. He loved it. I've got a problem with authority. And that's just how I am wired. I can't help it. And especially with people who are bullies. I just, you know, I have always been, I bully the bullies, if you know what I mean. I just can't stand bullies.
Yeah, you take up for the underdog.
And I've always been that way. And the military, to me, is the biggest bully of them all. And so that being said, I got to tell you, there's some really good people in the military. And when I talk about the military, you know, I'm really talking about the secret government. And there really seems to be some kind of secret government. But to go back, I learned that I was part of something called Project Preserve Destiny. And being in the military, it expanded. Let's see, it started, I think, in 1961 or 1962 and went all the way to 1967, where they had to deal with off-world beings. And not necessarily the good guys, but these children were changed in vitro so they could be involved in these black projects to communicate with these off-world beings. And, you know, this book called Above Black by, I think it's by the name of Dan Sherman, really opened my eyes. And after talking to Dan Sherman and doing some research, I'm absolutely positive that's what happened with me. Luckily, because I didn't go in the military, something higher, something better, something, you know, not against us, took me in a different direction. And,
wow.
And I truly, truly, truly believe that. Can I prove it? Yeah, it seems that, you know, most everything that happens to me, there's always witnesses. But can I prove this 100%? No. I just feel it with my heart.
And that's good enough for me. So keep on going with your story. You and Lisa met? You married?
We met actually online. She lived in Nebraska, and I lived here in Colorado, and we had both gone through these traumatic divorces, and we're just looking to have fun and talk and chat, and just, you know, we started out playing hearts on the internet and just went from there. And, you know, I wanted her to come visit me in Colorado, and, you know, I thought, I'm going to send her a little care package and videotape the surrounding area and, you know, try to get her to come up. And I actually got my camcorder out. I was going to go videotape the skyline of Denver from, you know, the foothills of the Rockies, and I never actually made it to where I was going to videotape because off to the side above some power lines was a huge UFO, and there are about 40 other people there watching this, and that's what got my attention.
Wow.
So, and that kind of kick-started. And what's interesting is I kind of forgot all the other stuff that happened to me when I was a kid, including the UFO stuff that happened to my dad. And after this, I really didn't believe in this stuff. I didn't believe in ghosts. I didn't believe in UFOs. I didn't believe in any of this stuff. And it literally, it took me about 4 years to come to terms with what started happening to me. And Lisa believed, I didn't. And if it wasn't for Lisa, I probably would have gone off the deep end. I really think I would have.
Wow. Well, I know that you were, and still are, cautious.
I am.
Because
you have to be.
You never know. And, you know, I don't want to elaborate on that. But also we know if anybody has read your books or Lisa's book, we know about Audrey, the wonderful voice, the wonderful being, who at first she explained to us last week that she thinks it's 3 different voices, three.
It seems to be a council, and that's the thing. And we have to be careful because there is so much disinformation put out by whomever for whatever reason, and there really is, an effort to keep this quiet. And so who knows? I have to be careful because some of this thing, I'm still that skeptic deep down inside, and some of the stuff that's happened, it's like, really, you got to be kidding me, really? I still don't believe it. So, you can be too close-minded and too open-minded. I think a happy medium is right where you should be.
I agree
That's how
with
you
you.
learn.
Well, let's go forward just a little bit. Well, maybe not forward. Yeah, forward. I think the best known sighting was the Roswell Crash.
Sure.
That's not a sighting. I mean, that everybody has heard about that. And if they haven't, it's simply because they're new to the field. There's a lot of information that's been written from Paula Harris and Clifford Stone and accounts from different people. But what I would love you to do, if you would, is share what you know, if you are so inclined, about...
Well, this is, we've got, because I'm so outspoken, I have some amazing friends. I've got friends in the military, generals, admirals. I'm friends with, ex-minister of defenses, heads of state, all these different people. And what I'm learning, and me and Lisa always joke around, if people knew what we knew, either they wouldn't believe it or they'd really have a hard time accepting what was really going on.
Yes.
And one of the things I found interesting with my experience with what I've learned from these connections that I have off-world and on-world is that Roswell, it's the reason the government is really trying to keep Roswell under wraps is not because it's necessarily extraterrestrial, but because it's not. And because of the technology they got from that situation. Now, when I say it's not extraterrestrial, it's something even more amazing. The Roswell Crash actually was us from 52,000 years into the future that came back to warn us about a technology we got called the looking glass technology. And this is what I was told. This is what, these connections I have told me. And doing some research, sure enough, it really does seem to be that that's truly what happened. Now, that being said, this group came back to warn us, but they forgot that we had radar. And radar, they forgot that we had really any kind of technology that could have done anything, but somehow the radar disrupted their navigation equipment, and something happened. They got hit by lightning or who knows what, but in any case, they crashed. Oddly enough, the technology they were warning us about was they were the ones that gave us the technology. So it was a kind of a catch-22, which I found rather interesting. And the technology that I'm talking about, the looking glass technology, was back engineered because they came from the future. And the government or the military, whomever, back engineered it and sold it to the highest bidder. So it was, this technology was how to look into the future. And so because it was given to the global elite, the wealthiest people, it started messing with our timeline. We're actually living in an altered timeline. And I don't want to give the book away, but, the first timeline was really, really scary.
Yeah.
And then we went into a second timeline and a third timeline. And we now get to choose. Is it going to be, as bad, if not worse, than the first timeline? Or, we get to choose if we live in a utopian society. And we're in a shift right now. And I always tell people, look, you got to understand, it's about love. It's about global consciousness. One thing I've learned from my experiences from both, my off-world connections, and, and I say that lightly because I don't know what else to call it.
Yes.
And my connections here is that humans have no idea who they are. Humans have no concept of their ability. And I'm going to give this part of my book away a little bit, but it needs to be said. Humans have this amazing ability to change quantum reality naturally. What that means is what we believe we manifest. That's why some of these off-world beings are interested in us. Some of them, not all of them. And there's multiple things out there, again, with multiple agendas.
Yes.
So, that being said, this global elite that's trying to rule the world understands that we have this ability. So what do? They control us through fear.
Yes.
By creating fear, because we manifest what we believe, we control ourselves, basically. So, once people learn they have these abilities, then they don't have to deal with that anymore. They don't have to put up with it. And I do a lot of presentations. I talk all over the country, all over the world. And at the end of my presentation, I have a scientific experiment that proves this theory. And I got to tell you, it not only blows everybody away, but it blows me away, because when you get at least 50 or more people, it really works. And it's
wow.
Dumbfounding. It really is dumbfounding.
Wow. Well, I don't want to give the ending of the book away, because that last chapter, well, not the very last, but the end of the book, when Lazarus shares with you the information that he does, it lifts you up. It explains everything.
Yeah.
And it to me, I would think it made all that you've been through, all the fear, all the difficulties, the looking over your shoulder all the time, it just, I think, gave you a totally new perspective on life, and helped you see that you really were chosen for this very special mission, and you probably chose it as well. And Lisa and I were talking when I interviewed her about the children, which just and you know what I would love, if you would, Lisa gave me her version of it, because there's always two sides to every story, but you actually experienced it. Will you share with our listeners, some of whom may have heard Lisa last week, some of whom may just be finding out about you now, about your talk that you gave in New Mexico, where you had been contacted? First of all, explain the hybrid children, what they are, where they're from, what the deal is, and then take us through that incredible day when you took a picture of your daughter.
Yeah, well, it started really with my first abduction experience. And every time that I'm taken, I'm not going to say the first, maybe the second abduction experience. Every time I'm taken, I was always taken with a woman. There's always a human female there. And I remember one time that I was taken, they brought me into this room. And there was this female there, and we were both just sitting there, and they brought these children in. There were 7 kids all together. There were 3 boys, I remember, and the rest were girls. And some of them looked like me, and some of them didn't. But even more amazing is the fact that some of them looked less human, and some of them looked more human.
Mm.
And I'll never forget, this little girl latched onto my leg and was holding my leg, and she wouldn't let go. And I looked down, and it's like, oh my God, she kind of looks like me. And that's when it hit me. It hit me like a ton of bricks. These are my kids. These are my hybrid kids. And they needed a female and a male of the species to create these these kids for whatever reason. And I remember there were two beings there. And I was going to fight them. I didn't want them to take these kids. I wanted to protect these children. And unless this happens to you, it's really hard to explain, but a thought popped into my head. They won't be safe with you. You can't take them because they won't survive. And it made total sense. Considering the fact that humans don't like each other just over color and race, there's no way these children would be able to be anywhere. Number one, the government would get a hold of them and then disappear.
Oh, forever.
So that's really how the hybrid thing started. And, you know, at first it's like, oh, could this be just some kind of weird dream? But then my wife had a surprise book release party for me. Or not a book release party. I became a best-selling author. And she had a party for me, a surprise party for me. And it was during this party. It was raining outside. It must have been 9 o'clock at night. And these children, or not children, but this little girl was standing at the edge of my driveway. And there was a light on the porch that I had on, and we don't have any street lights because we don't have street lights. Everybody usually turns on their porch light. And I could just barely make her out, but I'm thinking, number one, what parent in their right mind will let their kid, you know, play this late at night? And why is she wearing a gray jumpsuit, and why is she just standing there in the rain? So, of course, I wanted to know questions to these answers, or the answers to these questions. So I, you know, go outside and I try to get her attention, and she runs away.
Mm-hmm.
Well, totally confused. I'm letting everybody at the party know that there was some strange little girl outside, and they're saying, Stan, just let her alone. You know, don't worry about it. Just neighbor kid. Well, she comes back, and I see her, and there she is, staring at me, just staring at me, and there's something different about her, but I couldn't figure it out. And I couldn't see her very well because it was dark, but so I looked for a flashlight. I couldn't find a flashlight, so I grabbed my camera. I was using the flash of my camera. Now, we have one of the investigators involved in my case is ex-naval intelligence. Very good guy. He really is a good guy. He's on the good side. And he followed me, and we went out there, and I'm trying to see where this little girl is, and I take a picture, and I see this little girl pops out from behind a tree, and I capture a picture of her. And it's like, oh, my God, I am so dumbfounded by what I just took a picture of. I couldn't even move. I couldn't talk. I couldn't move. I'm just sitting there going, that no way. That can't be real. And our friend Rick comes up, and he goes, Stan, what happened? Stan, and I just held up the camera. He goes, oh, my God, you got to show everybody. So she runs away, and there's no way we could catch her because, number one, we can't see where she went. And so we go back inside and show everybody this picture. And, you know, we have physicists, scientists, researchers, all these different people at our house, and some of them start crying because this picture it's almost like it was emanating love just off the picture itself. I don't know how else to explain it. It was the most beautiful, peaceful little being you could ever imagine. Huge, very slanted, almond-shaped eyes, so blue they were almost violet. And, you know, everybody's yelling at me, Stan, put it on the computer so we could get a better look at this picture. As soon as I stepped down the couple steps that lead to my office, the camera went beep, and the picture disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's yelling at me, Stan, what'd you do? What'd you do? It's like I didn't do anything. 2 minutes later, my stepdaughter handed me the phone and said, there's a phone call for you. And when I answered the phone, this little girl goes, Daddy, I'm okay. I love you. We'll get to see each other again sometime. I lost it. I just started bawling because I knew that little girl, it just came rushing back to me. That little girl that I saw peeking her head from behind the tree was the little girl that was hugging my leg. Up in the crack. And there were other situations where we had taken pictures that picture disappeared, but we caught one of them in our backyard picking flowers, and then we actually got a phone call from, it has to be one of these children. We were, not a phone call, but we were talking with friends, and we got a phone call, was interrupted, and this little girl comes on and says, explains that there are 9 children, 7 of the same, 2, each one from different, which kind of doesn't make sense now, but if you read the book, you'll understand.
Yes.
And then they also got a phone call letting us know that they were going to show up at a conference. And sure enough, they did. They showed up at a conference I was doing in front of everybody, multiple witnesses. And we got a picture, and she actually went, and this happened while I was gone, apparently getting ready for my talk. And then when I came back, one of them was sitting down. My wife made me get a picture. I thought she looked normal at first, and it was dark, and I didn't want to take the picture. And Lisa goes, "There's something strange about that child. Take a picture." And because I didn't want to interrupt the speaker that was speaking at the time, I kind of put the camera by my leg and took a picture that, guard the flash a little bit. And this wonderful child we got a picture of actually gave a woman her name and told us a little bit about who she was. And it's amazing. It's an amazing picture, and it's in the book.
I'm looking at it right now. It is an amazing picture. She looks much older in this picture, but her brow line, the ridge, at first I thought it was makeup, but I realized, no, that's the brow ridge that goes down to the bridge of her nose. She's wearing that unique pendant, wearing that pantsuit, that jumpsuit, and the 3 fingers on her hand. Of course, she's got them folded. Absolutely amazing. Now, Lisa has that very same picture in her book from my side of the bed, but this is a much clearer, closer picture, and I can see she is so not from here. There's no
she
question.
isn't, but even more amazing is we learn that Lisa's hybrid daughter. Now, I'm going to have to back up a little bit. It was by chance that I met the woman that I was taken with all those years. She was she just attended the talk that I did in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and she was at the restaurant, and it's like, where do I know that woman from? I know. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I mean, I started shaking. I almost threw up. It was just like, oh, my God, that can't be. Well, I introduced myself, and sure enough, we all started having memories and started realizing, and she was the mother of 7 of the children, the 7 that were in the ship. And then later on, we have a friend named Heidi that was taken with me, and she became the mother of one of the children, and my wife was mother of one of the children. And that little girl that you see in the book is my wife's hybrid daughter.
Incredible. Incredible. At first, because when I saw it in Lisa's book, and I can't find it here right now, it was at a distance, but I could see that brow arch, that ridge. In your book, there's no question about it. Anybody's seen that.
I wished I should have put a picture of my wife when she was a little girl, because it looks exactly the same almost. I mean, the child looked, but she's sitting there much older in this conference, and I got to tell you, there were people there. Now, interestingly enough, this conference was held at a Mason's Lodge in Aztec, New Mexico.
Yes.
And the head Mason there came up to me, and he was he looked like he'd been crying, and he was shaking. He said, "Stan, I can't believe it. She wasn't human. Stan, she wasn't human." And all these people came forward and wrote witness reports, and, there were 3 of them there. And it's quite amazing. And, a lot of people aren't going to believe this. But what makes my case so different, what makes it so different, is most of the stuff that happens only happens with people around. This is one of those situations, and there were a lot of people.
There were a lot of people, and Well, when I went to your site and saw the picture of, I call it the alien at the screen door,
Yeah.
that blew me away. That one blew me away. In other words, you have offered visual proof. It's not just hearsay. It's not just your word. It's witnesses and it's pictures.
And it's not just pictures. I mean, you have to understand, I have some of the top physicists, some of the top scientists in the world involved in my case. And, these guys put up surveillance cameras. It's not just me catching stuff. It's other people around me catching stuff.
Oh.
And it's sad because there is an effort to keep this quiet. So there's a lot of people out there trying to say this is fake, trying to say this is all made up because, and they always use the same thing, it's to make money. Well, if I do make money, who cares? Why is that a bad thing? The trouble is, don't make money in this.
No, you don't.
Who in their right mind would want this kind of attention? It just doesn't.
Oh, my God, you're always looking over your shoulder. Well, I would imagine less now because you have so many followers now and so much support. And if, God forbid, anything happened to you, man.
Well, I don't know if Lisa told you with the interview you did with her, but we just found a listening device in our house just 2 weeks ago.
Really?
Yes, and the publishing company we're with got some inside intel that maybe they should have a sweep done, and they hired some people to do a sweep of our house, and they actually found 2 listening devices.
Oh, my word.
So that's the second time that's happened. So if this isn't real, then why are whoever they are, going to this much trouble?
Yes.
It doesn't. And that doesn't make sense either. I mean, we're an open book. We let everybody know what happened.
I was just going to say. I know it doesn't. But I think it's the nature of the beast. I really do. I think it's the nature of the beast. And that's why my feeling is just keep on keeping on. You cannot digress. You cannot be distracted. You're here for a mission. You're here for a purpose. And you clearly are protected. We talked about Audrey and the protection that the real Audrey offers, the real one.
That's who we found out who Audrey is, and I'm not going to give that part away. You have to get the book.
I think Lisa
blew me
did.
Away. That was amazing.
Well, and you know what? The end, as I said before, the ending of the book is just so exquisite, so mind-blowing. I had to put it down. I mean, even as I was reading the book, I read it all day yesterday, I had to put it down and kind of walk around and grab something to eat to digest some of this wonderful information. And when you talk about the events of the current time, when you talk about George Bush talking about the necessity to go into Iraq to stop a weapon of mass destruction, and you talk about what that weapon really was. Oh, I mean, this is nobody could make this up.
Yeah, and this information was given to me. So if people don't believe it, hey, and I always tell people this: look, don't believe me. Just do your own research. If you're gonna criticize me, come back at me with something worth coming back. I mean, most of these debunkers will say, "You're making this up," but they can't have it. They don't have anything to back it up with. It's like, okay, First of all, this information was given to me. I've done a lot of research. My wife has done a lot of research. Looking glass technology really does seem to be real. It is a real thing. Everything I talk about, you can get from somewhere else. You can get this information from somewhere else if you don't believe me.
Now, when you're talking about the Looking Glass Project, Stan, you're talking about remote viewing?
No, it is an actual back-engineered thing from the Roswell Crash to actually look into the future or go into the future. Yes. I'm a little unclear about that, but I'm trying to go off what I was told. And, because of this technology, and now, from what I understand, it's all been shut down.
Yes.
For now, anyhow. It screwed up our timeline. It's made things not correct. So we've had a little help, and I really don't want to go into that too much because you have to read. It would be a whole other show to go into that, actually.
I was very interested, without going into detail, about the fact that there were 3 timelines, and we're in the 3rd timeline now. The first 2 being a little bit scary. The 3rd one.
This one could be, if we aren't careful, it could be even more scary. But see, this is the thing. You know, I don't believe in this. People are putting too much effort into this 2012 Mayan calendar crap.
Oh yeah.
And really, if you do any kind of research at all, and trust me, I've done a lot, and I've been told what's going on. Is it true? I believe it is. But this Mayan calendar thing started with one English guy who was this New Age guru, supposedly, and he got everybody all freaked out about this. And then everybody jumped on the bandwagon, blah, blah, blah. But if you do any kind of research, you find out that the Mayan calendar is really hard to pair up with the Gregorian calendar, which we are using now. And in fact, there is constant bickering and fighting over how close it is. But then, if you understand that the Mayans didn't have leap year involved in their calendar, and leap year came along with Julius Caesar later on, technically speaking, the world should have ended last year. And then, on top of that, if you talk to the Mayan elders who are alive today, they think white people are crazy. They really do. They think the United States, they said, why are people believing in this? The Mayans don't even have the word apocalypse in their language. They said the change is happening. We are in the change now. And yes, we are. We are in the change now. Once humans understand who they are and this amazing ability they have, you know, it changes everything. And I always talk about, it's called the Maharishi effect. You ever hear of that?
Yes. Yes.
Well, the Maharishi University got in conjunction with, was it Harvard, I think, came up with this test. They wanted to prove that prayer and meditation work. So what they decided, they figured out a calculation that like 1%, either it's 1% or 10% of city's population by praying can change, you know, the outcome of violence in the city, change the percentage, you know, like drop the violence, the crime rate. That's what I was trying to think of, the crime rate in the city. So they went to the state that had, or the city that had the highest crime rate, which was Washington, D.C., and they said, look, we're going to drop your crime rate just by praying and meditating. And they laughed at them at first, but they said, okay, well, what could this hurt? Let's try it. So sure enough, not only did they drop the crime rate 20%, but the time that they did this, the crime rate should have climbed 20%. In total, they dropped the crime rate 40% just by prayer and meditation. And they've done this multiple times. It's worked every single time. Now, because we have this ability to change quantum reality, we also have who we are is a little bit more complicated. And I just recently saw, must have been about 2 months ago on CNN, I saw it one time where the head of the Human Genome Project on TV said, oh, and by the way, 30 to 40% of human DNA doesn't come from this planet.
Wow.
So what does that mean? It means that this is going to, as far as I'm concerned, I think this will probably be the hardest thing for the human race to accept. Aliens are nothing compared to this, but once we find out we are the hybrid, that changes everything.
Yes. Yes. Well, as you say in your book, whatever we focus on, we can bring to fruition. We can create with a thought, and that's angelic. That's of the deity.
And that's because we have this connection to God, this connection to Source, that some of these other beings don't have. They lost along the way. I mean, the Greys, for instance.
Yes.
There are multiple types of what we call Greys. Some of them aren't even Greys. Some of them are from somewhere else. But some of them are, you know, they've gone a different path. They decided to go technological, and they kind of lost their way and forgot the spiritual. So now their race is dying out. They've cloned themselves so many times that they're a weak species, and they're trying to find a way to save themselves to us. And that's why some of these beings abduct us the way they do and take us the way they do. I've had 2 experiences where I was abducted. I think the rest, yes, they kind of took me against my will, but it was more an introduction and a contact scenario.
Yeah.
The times that I'm talking about that I was abducted, I believe was military. And I'm not even going to say military, I'm going to say maybe secret government. Because that was all about scaring me, and, I felt sick for weeks. But, you have to go through this without fear and with love, because we have to change it. It's not going to be the government. It's going to be us. It's going to be, the public. It's going to be a grassroots campaign from the bottom up. That's the only way it's going to work.
And let me tell you, astrologically, as an astrologer, that is what's going on. I don't think that's a shock to you, but that is what's going on. Thank goodness. Now, would you, for the benefit of those people, as I said, who may not be well versed in what you're talking about, will you very briefly, because we don't want to dwell on this and give it power, secret government, give us the Wikipedia definition from Stan?
First of all, people have to understand that there is a war going on out there as well as on this planet over what happens to the human race. There are things that don't want us to succeed because they're afraid of our potential. And there are things that want us to succeed because they want us out in the neighborhood. That being said, I say that a lot, that being said, we have to do it ourselves. We can't ask for help, because once we ask for help, we're indebted to whoever it was we asked for help from. We have to grow up. It's part of the test. Once we reach that, and we're right at that point where we can either self-destruct because we're at the technological point, we have those weapons. If we can get past that point, then we can be part of the neighborhood. Now, there is, I'm going to call it the military-industrial complex and or the global elite. And there's good guys within that, too. The message I have is for everybody. I can't, and I've been shot at, beat up, we get threats all the time. This message is for them most of all, because they're the ones that are the most lost. Everybody and everything in this wonderful universe, because it's part of that God consciousness, whatever you want to call it, oneness, God, whatever.
Yes.
Everything is connected. And once you truly understand that, you need to start understanding that a lot of these people do what they do because they're scared and lost. And this global elite, for them it's all about control. They have more money than they can ever use, but they're afraid of losing control. And they're afraid to have to admit that they've been lying all this time. And then there's the free technology thing. This free energy thing that's gone around. These people that are making millions and billions of dollars off of oil don't want to lose that control. They don't want people to get this free energy, because then why use fossil fuels? And they don't care. They don't care if it's bad for the environment. They just want to make the almighty dollar. And see, that's what this is all about.
Yeah.
They don't understand that what affects us affects them. They haven't gotten to that point because they're so driven by greed and fear.
Yes. So the hidden government is comprised of what you've just described.
Yeah, either the military-industrial complex and or the global elite. And there's rumors that it could be off-world entities helping to control us. And either way, it doesn't matter, because they're all part of the bigger picture. Yes. And I look at it this way, and it's just my theory, that this, there's an argument that we are three-dimensional beings trying to live in a multidimensional, universe. That's not true. I say it's the other way around. We are multidimensional beings living in this three-dimensional space, trying to bring up this three-dimensional space. So this three-dimensional reality, and science is even admitting we live in a multiverse. And so I believe that the three-dimensional space is like the roots of a tree. You kill the roots of the tree, the whole tree dies.
Yes.
So we are here as a race to try to bring up, as part of this God consciousness, whatever, we are here to try to bring up this dimension so it could raise up everything else. It's all about ascension.
Oh, yes, it is. And I really do believe with this third timeline, timeline 3 that we're on, the good guys are going to win. It is
just think positive. Instead of being angry or scared, just say, no, it's not going to happen that way. Just by that thought, you've already changed things. You've already changed the timeline. It's as simple as that, and I can prove it. If people come to my talk, our talk, my wife speaks one day, I speak the other day. If you come to our talk, I speak the 29th, Lisa speaks the 30th. I have that experiment that I'm going to show everybody, and I will give you the link where you can do it yourself if you don't believe me. It's amazing. I honestly, there are times I cry, and we realize that it's not necessarily the number of people, it's the quality. We did a talk with a bunch of what I like to call New Agers, I guess. And unfortunately, I apparently am in that genre now because I talk about enlightenment stuff.
Yes, you are, Stan. Yes.
I don't like to put labels on things because then people who are in that genre just focus on that and you don't reach anybody else.
Yeah.
So, but we were in this very, let's say, enlightened group, and there must have been 40 people. And this experiment that I do literally has a meter and will measure this consciousness.
Oh, my.
And it pegged this meter just by these few people. And I've been in groups of, a couple thousand, and it went pretty high, but nothing like this small group. And we realized that if you truly believe, you're going to be the one that affects this the most.
I agree with you 100%. Will you share that site, or are you saving it for Friday, for the end of the month?
I'm saving it for the end of the month.
Okay. Well, at some point in time, if you choose to share it, you let me know, and I will have you back on, and you can talk.
Well, I can kind of give you a hint. It was devised by the University of Kent and the University of Sweden, and it's an experiment that you can use yourself to find out if you're telekinetic. And I decided, hey, let's try this for bigger groups. And the big groups affected every single time.
How
and
awesome.
It's real time. It's a real time experiment, and it really works.
Oh gosh. So, guys, if you're in the South Florida area, or even if you're not, and you want to take a wonderful weekend trip, head on down to Fort Lauderdale. There's plenty to do during the day down there. June 29th and June 30th, because Stan and Lisa Romanek are going to be doing this wonderful event, their disclosure. And I know, you can tell just from listening to Stan, he's very open, he's very giving with his information. He's going to share stuff that he hasn't shared before. I just know it. His book, this latest book that I finished yesterday, Answers, you've got to go get it. It is at the very end of the book. I'm not going to say another word. I'm just going to tell you, you want to get your sticky little fingers on this book because your answers will be forthcoming.
Get both books. My wife's book, From My Side of the Bed, is from her perspective. She's got some really amazing information in there that'll help people, spouses, who are going through this. She will kind of give you hints of what to do and how to deal with things. And then my first book, Messages, sets the pace for answers. And I got to tell you, everything that happened in all the books really happened, but especially in Answers, because a lot of people are going to read that book and go, come on, really? I'm telling you, it truly happened. And I wrote it in such a way that I wanted people to understand that I'm still a skeptic, and I want to come on the ride with me.
I think that you wrote it beautifully. It's beautifully written. I didn't see any typos in it, which is a miracle. It's validated so much, but it gave me new information, and it lifted me up. It is a magnificent book. You've done a wonderful job, and you've paid your dues. You've paid the price, and now it's time for us to applaud you and to support the work that you're doing, which, I can do by having you on my radio show. I'm so glad that you were able to be here. And in the few minutes we have left, we've got just a couple of minutes, do you have anything that you would like to say, anything to share, any last words of inspiration for our listeners?
Look, it's about everybody. You can't be in this alone. You got to start seeking others, and you got to understand that we're all connected. And, also I want to let people know that there's going to be a documentary out about my story if they want to learn more. But go to the website, connect with us on Facebook. We have an email list. We've got, tell us your stories, start sharing. Don't be afraid anymore, because you're the one that's going to make a difference. All of us together. And people say, it's just little bitty old me. What can I do? Well, look what I've done.
Yes.
Look, I'm
what you've done.
Severely dyslexic. I can't spell with a darn. And I wrote an international best-selling book just because
and there are going to be more
about something.
There are going to be more. Stan, I'm just so grateful to you for sharing your time with our listeners. This show goes all over the world, and your message is going out there all over the world. Once again, people, StanRomanek.com. His wife's website is Lisa Romanek, Romanek, LisaRomanek.com. And their wonderful event in Florida, RomanekDisclosure.com. Thank you so much, Stan, for being my guest. And everybody, please join me next week when once again I have another marvelous mover and shaker carrying us through the shift and beyond. And